Welcome in to the KSL Sports Front Page. Tom Hackett, Ben Anderson with you guys. Hope you're enjoying your beautiful Monday. What's the official date today, Ben? It's September 21st, and it's a Monday. Are you one of those? Are you one of those individuals, Ben, that despises Mondays like the rest of humanity?
No, I like Mondays. Mondays are a good day, especially during the NFL season, because Monday Night Football is really one of the single greatest products that American sports has ever created. Monday Night Football is as good a national, I think, viewing experience as we have.
No, I'm with you. I'm not opposed to Mondays, but I know there are many people out there that simply can't stand them. Hey, before we get going, dive into some stories, maybe some headlines that you may have missed over the weekend. There are obviously a few things worth talking about today as well. Do feel free to comment, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Periscope. Please comment. We can see all of them, and we would be happy to invite you guys into the conversation. But I think we'll start with kind of the headliner story on the KSLSports.com website, Ben. It's more chaos coming out of Real Salt Lake, Real Monarchs, Utah Royals, that entire organization down there. Over the weekend, this story kind of grew legs with the Royals manager or head coach, I guess, as you call him here in America, Craig Harrington. He has been placed on a leave of absence by the club, and it's a part of this investigation, supposedly from MLS Soccer. There's still very little detail, I must say, regarding this story, but he's not with the club. The Royals got their season restarted yesterday against the Portland Thorn, and he wasn't on the sideline. Now, you know what was most interesting about this, and I'd love to hear your take on the matter, is the club didn't release a statement about this investigation or absence, I guess, from Harrington. So there was a lot of concern and confusion online when fans and media members recognized that Harrington wasn't with the team.
Yeah, and I'm with you. It's strange, and I've read the article, and I've tried to look up, kind of other information, and there's just not a whole lot to grab onto as to why he's not there. Now, with the elements of what's changed with ownership at RSL, other lead positions that have been moved around, I mean, I think it's easy to draw that line, but that is something we need to be careful of doing, because it's those are very serious allegations, and to just loop somebody in or lump somebody in with that, I think is difficult to do. So it is more cause for concern within that organization, because it's clearly so rampant and was at the lower levels and reached all the way to the highest levels that you could within one organization. And it's bad if that's the case. But if it's an overhaul of what you're trying to do for a culture and fix an entire system, you got to look everywhere. You got to look under every rock, and it sounds like that's what's going on. And look, that's promising. That's a good thing. That's what you want if you're a soccer fan in the state of Utah, because regardless of how you feel about allegations, anything like that, good ownership, good culture wins in sports. I mean, look at the NFL. We talk about the Steelers. We talk about the Giants. We talk about, these teams that are traditionally good. I know the Giants are bad now, but like the best owners in sports have good cultures that permeate throughout their entire organization. That happens why the Jazz are always a playoff team. They've got great ownership. That's good in sports, and you need that. And hopefully you're finding that now from the ground up in RSL and within that entire organization, because it needs it. And when it's had it, it's been successful.
Right. It's certainly been a chaotic time down there in Sandy and/or Herriman. It's worth noting as well, look, over the last handful of months, with all of the change that's trying to happen in North America specifically, Craig Harrington has been rather vocal with his support of his ladies, his team. Enough is enough. Change needs to happen. He wrote that was earlier this month, just a couple of weeks ago on September 3rd. Now, in the meantime, Amy Lepelvet will serve as the interim head coach. She got off to a rocky start, I think it's fair to say. 3-0 loss to the Portland Thorns FC yesterday, and we will continue to monitor this situation as it unfolds. But look, very little information is known regarding what exactly Harrington has done to warrant this leave of absence, but as you mentioned, Ben, it is a rather serious matter nonetheless, and here at KSL Sports, we will take it like that as well. Hey, there is a fair bit of BYU news coming out of today, and this is the headline. BYU quarterback Zach Wilson reveals positive COVID-19 test over summer. Ben, simple question to you. Was this a mistake from Wilson on admitting certainly the way this all unfolded? He admitted that he took part in a gambling night over the summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great look. It's also what I expect from every college athlete. I mean, you played college football, Tom, and I didn't play college football, but I went to college. I understand what goes on, and we've seen the types of parties that are going on across the country, but really specifically locally, we're seeing it happening right now in Utah County and at BYU. We need to take it more seriously. Clearly, people need to take it more seriously. We're glad Zach Wilson is fine, though, and is recovered and appears healthy and has been back on the field. But we got to talk about it. We got to talk about the mistakes were made. We can't, kind of whitewash this idea that, hey, just kind of reached out and grabbed me. Sometimes we have to take some personal responsibility in how it happened.
I do want to kind of dive into the fact that he also admitted that he's on this exempt list when it comes to the testing down there at BYU, and of course, without making this all too political, it does interest me nonetheless, because I didn't think, and granted, I haven't been tracking all of the COVID-19 movement, so to speak, but I thought it was possible to contract the virus twice. Am I wrong in saying that, Ben, or have you heard the same thing? Because he's not getting tested because he had the virus already. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
So my understanding, and this is from listening to a podcast on New York Times, which, I'm going to buy into at that point. It's such a high level and they've done the research and they've talked to the doctors, is that there are recorded cases, and at least one recorded case of a man who was in Wuhan where it started, who got a second positive test 6 months after he got it the first time. And kind of the issue, and not to dive too deeply into this at all, because I'm speaking out of my depth, I assure you, I'm repeating what I've heard, was that he had a very mild case the first time, and they think that maybe he was so mild that he didn't recognize he had it, that the antibodies really didn't even build up for him to prevent it coming back a second time. So that's the problem with this, and I think it's what we're all learning, is we're still so early in how serious this virus is. We don't know what the long-term effects are going to be, which is why people have been afraid to engage in athletic activities. But we don't even know are you immune for 6 months? Are you immune for a year? Are you immune for the rest of your life? We don't know. And that's still what they're trying to figure out. So it is dangerous to say, hey, you can't get it again because you have had it once. We don't know.
Sorry, Ben, did you lose me there for a second?
No, I think it just went quiet, but I think I'm back and you're here. We'll see what happens. Hey, you never know. Ever since the windstorm, you just never know what kind of power outages or internet outages you're going to get.
Well, I just got the loading sign over here, so I was nervous, but I didn't do that on purpose. I promise I didn't try and make it that awkward. I will say, to be interesting, our BYU insider, Mitch Harper, who, by the way, you can catch on KSL's Unrivaled on KSL News Radio tonight. He's hosting with Alex Kiri from 7 to 9. I'm sure he'll be doing as much digging as possible to try and get to the bottom of all of that. But that's kind of the big BYU story coming out of today. I guess, yesterday, BYU fans were like this one as well. The BYU football team came in at number 23 in the latest coaches poll, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the best ranking they have had since 2014, after they rose to number 18 following a 4-0 start in 2018. So they've only played one game. It was a very impressive game, Ben, against Navy nonetheless, but they're inside the top 25 of the coaches poll. Do you make anything of that, or because this season is so strange and discombobulated, if you will, it's kind of, BYU fans don't really care for it, do you think?
More of an applause for the fact that they found a way to play. Now, we can't say that they found a way to play perfectly efficiently, because we know games have already been canceled since then, and it's come from the BYU side why some of these games have been canceled. So I applaud anyone who's been able to figure out a way to get back and play and figure out a way to try and return to some normalcy. The NBA's done it. NFL's done it fabulously. Major League Baseball found a really nice way to come back after, remember, that early scare with the Miami Marlins. So now college football's figuring out a way to play, and if they can do it safely, you don't want to take a victory lap yet because it's so early in this process. But if you're out there and you're playing, you deserve to be ranked. If you especially if you're winning games, looking impressively. So tip of the hat to BYU. I think they deserve credit for their ambition, trying to get back onto the field. And look, if the other teams aren't playing, you got to rank them, and BYU deserves that ranking.
We will we'll roll through some other BYU notes here. I won't be clicking on the stories necessarily, but it seems like BYU's leading tackler from 2019, Kavika Fanua, could be switching from the defensive side to the offensive side if he's needed at running back. That I'm sure interests BYU fans. And then Ziggy Ansah, who somehow found himself out of the league despite a very dominating first couple of years. He's reportedly going to sign with San Francisco after the number of injuries. I mean, San Francisco have been hit quite heavily with injuries, but across the league entirely, this weekend was not a pleasant one. And it's good to see Ziggy Ansah back, potentially with the 49ers, who last year ranked as one of the top defenses in the NFL. And then, of course, you've got more Taysom news. Raiders head coach John Gruden calling Taysom Hill a great football player and weapon for the Saints. By the way, quickly, you can catch Monday Night Football on ESPN today. The Saints are at the Raiders. And so a good little local matchup for us here in the great state of Utah. That game starts at 6:15 for all those wondering. There is some basketball news, Ben, so I'll hand over the reins and let you discuss this Donovan Mitchell piece you put out earlier today.
Yeah, Michael Scotto, who works for Hoops Hype, who I've actually had on the Jazz Notes podcast, which I do weekly. I've known Michael quite a while now, lives in Brooklyn, is pretty well in touch with a lot of the East Coast general managers and executives. He had a list where he reached out to 15 different talent evaluators in the NBA. That includes executives, which is like, vice president of basketball operations, which is what Dennis Lindsey is, general managers, which is what Justin Zanuck is with the Utah Jazz, and then a couple of NBA scouts, 15 in total, and asked them to rank the top 5 players under the age of 25 that they would want to build a franchise around. And no surprise, Luka Doncic came in at number 1. He's already a top 5 or 6 player in the NBA. He's in his second year. So Luka comes in at number 1. Jason Tatum with the Boston Celtics, who's on this great run, making the Eastern Conference Finals, comes in at number 2. Devin Booker came in at 3, which was a little surprising to me. He just hasn't done a whole lot of winning, but obviously he was fabulous in the bubble. Number 4, John Morant, who was just the Rookie of the Year. I think that's a little high. I would still take Donovan Mitchell over him. But Donovan came in at number 5, and you saw his ability to carry a team in the playoffs this year, 36 points a game, which is going to, finish as the league leader in playoff scoring this season. Shot over 50% from the floor in the 3-point line, and almost had the Jazz going to the second round with a chance to beat the Los Angeles Clippers had they won that Game 7 with the Mike Conley 3. So Donovan Mitchell came in at number 5 on that list. It's a great honor. If you're a top 5 player under 25, and yes, while there's other players who are going to come in the draft and continue to get better, Tom, and there's going to be good young players always, you have a chance to be a top 5 player a couple of seasons from now. And that's how you win championships. You simply don't win a championship if you don't have a top 5 player on your roster. And generally you need probably 2 top 20 players, and one of those guys has to be top 5. And I think Donovan Mitchell has that chance. So making this type of list is super impressive. And not only is that good for the Jazz, as far as they have that one guy, it makes other players recognize, hey, that might be a destination to go play with the star that I can win with.
Hey, for all the Jazz fans tuning in that actually have a day job and don't have the luxury of, like yourself, of following and tracking their every move, Ben, what's the timeline now for the Jazz? The NBA season's still ongoing down there in the bubble in Orlando. The Jazz's season obviously came to an end a week or 2 ago now. Where are they at now? Are they looking at draft prospects? Are they thinking about free agency? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so the NBA draft prospect or draft process is still kind of getting worked out. They moved the draft from October 16th to November 18th now to give to give the league several weeks after the season is wrapped up to figure out how much money did they make, how much money did they lose, and that's what they set the salary cap on. So then they can set the salary cap, and then you can have the draft, because we know teams like to trade big salaries on draft night. They like to trade players to figure out what their salary cap is going to look like. So they really needed to get some of those things worked out. So they're still in the process of working that out. It sounds like they're going to have a virtual draft combine this year instead of having a bunch of players gather in one location like they've done in the past. I don't know how effective that's going to be. It's going to change how we evaluate players. You don't get to see guys one-on-one. You don't get to run guys through specific drills. The Jazz, Tom, have a very specific kind of pre-draft drill that they run guys through where they make them shoot 100 3-pointers. It's called the Jazz 100. They have another one where you have to go You score layups, and you have to see how many you can make within a minute. I think you get something like 3 dribbles end to end or 4 dribbles end to end. I mean, it's just a crazy process because they really want to test your athleticism. They want to test your conditioning, how seriously you've taken the pre-draft process. Because if you don't take that seriously, they really don't believe that you're going to take practice seriously and everything it takes to be a professional athlete seriously. So the Jazz are going to miss out on things like that, which means draft night's probably going to be a little bit more of a guess, which is bad because you don't want to be guessing on guys who don't want to come and live in the state of Utah. But it can also be good where maybe you don't overthink the draft process, which we know happens. And I was reminded of that last night watching Sunday Night Football when DK Metcalf somehow slipped out of the first round, and you realize, oh yeah, draft a 6'4", 240-pound wide receiver who has a 4.3 40. Like, don't overthink that sometimes, and that certainly happens in the NBA too.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting conversation, one that will continue for, I'm sure, our lifetime and moving forward. Hey, there is spark of conversation regarding our good friend Derek Favors. Is there a slim chance that he returns to Vivint Smart Home Arena and the Utah Jazz this offseason?
Yeah, I think it's probably more than a slim chance. I think he really has a chance to come back and play for the Jazz next year, and I think it makes a lot of sense. The Jazz clearly needed another big man to come off the bench and play. The issue with Favors was always figuring out, hey, can he be okay not starting? And it kind of does sound like those issues have been alleviated. He would be okay coming in as a backup, still going to play 25, 30 minutes a game, which is starter level minutes. The Jazz can figure that out, whether he's playing at the 4 next to Rudy or he's playing next to Bojan Bogdanovic at the 5. The Jazz certainly can use him. They could use his athleticism. He's comfortable in the state of Utah. He knows how to play in Quinn Snyder's system and with guys like Joe Ingles. So he can be effective. He can probably get the full mid-level exception from the Jazz if he wants it, if the Jazz feel like that's a worthwhile investment. And he's a top 7 guy in a rotation that can play in the playoffs. And I think, Tom, one of the issues for the Jazz this year was they had guys who were on the floor in the postseason who shouldn't be playing. That there are guys who can play 82 games in the regular season who can't play in those final 16 games of the year that need to be wins in the playoffs. And the Jazz relied on too many of those guys. And Derek Favors is a guy we've seen hit big shots, win playoff games, fill in for Rudy Gobert, and do an extremely high level and adequate job. So that's a guy you can afford to pay $10 million a year, which is what the mid-level exception is, and would certainly make that Jazz bench significantly better.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see Big Fade back in Utah. That'd be cool. Hey, I want to end on this quick story. I just put it up. It's regarding Tony Finau. It's more of an opinion piece than anything. But I do question whether or not the strategy that Finau approaches just about every golf tournament needs to change. The reason I say that is simply because Bryson DeChambeau is kind of revolutionizing the way golf is seen by the rest of the world. He's it's been quite. Ben, you're into the NBA and the basketball, but I do know you can hit a golf ball, and if you haven't been able to kind of keep track of what Bryson's been able to do. He started in October of 2019. He was 195 pounds, and now he weighs about 250. He drinks, I don't know, anywhere from 20 to 30 protein shakes a day. He works out after every round. He works out every day. And so most of the weight he's put on is muscle. He now bombs the ball off the tee. And it was a daunting task at Winged Foot Golf Club this past weekend where the US Open was held. But he was the only one under par by the time it was all said and done. He won the tournament by 6 strokes. And I do think Tony Finau needs to kind of learn something from Bryson and maybe change his strategy. Tony Finau can hit the ball at 206 miles per hour. That's ball speed. Bryson DeChambeau, to put that into some perspective, hits it about 203 when he's trying to max out. So Tony has the ability. I just think for all you golf lovers, go check out this story I wrote. There are a few numbers and stats in there too to kind of back up my work. But Bryson DeChambeau is revolutionizing the game of golf.
Tom,
and yes,
you think
Ben?
You think it's more of a physical issue than a mental issue?
No, well, I think so. Tony has it in his bag, but his backswing's only 3/4 of the way back, and he does it on purpose because he's trying to find more fairways, and he thinks that him finding more fairways will give him better shots into the green, and subsequently make more birdies. But Bryson only hit, and I've got the number in here, it's like 23 of 56 fairways at the US Open. And I don't know if you saw any of the videos, but the rough was as long as like an Arnold Palmer iced tea can,
right.
Those big, what are they, 18, 24, whatever they are, ounce cans. I mean, it was really long. And so everybody was talking
on the head of your club every time you hit the ball with the grass was so long.
Yeah. And everybody was talking about, you have to hit fairways. And Bryson from the second he stepped out on the golf course before the tournament had even started, he said, no, I'm going to hit driver, and I don't really care if it goes into the rough or on the fairway. I'm going to be closer to the hole, give me more an advantage. And everyone kind of laughed at him and said, you're a fool. Don't do it. That's not the way you wing at Wingfoot. And he won by 6 shots. So I just think, I think now's the time for Tony to make the change. He's only won one tournament, Tony Finau, and he's like a top 20 golfer and has been for 5 years. He's won one tournament, came back in 2016. So I don't know what he's got to lose personally. But anyway, there's a little golf story to get you golf geeks out there thinking. Hey, Ben, you're the host of the Jazz podcast, Jazz Notes to be exact. People can check that out wherever they download their podcast. Where can they find you on all the social media platforms?
Yeah, find me on Twitter at Ben's Hoops. I just did a big write-up. I can do it you can find me on Instagram as well at Ben's Hoops. I linked to all my articles there with kind of some previews, so it's an easy way to follow me. I'm doing a lot right now on free agency and the NBA draft. We're going to do that at KSL Sports. I promise you, better than any other local media by an enormous margin. So if you like the Jazz and you want to follow us in the offseason, right now, there's never been a better time to do it.
Benny, it's been a pleasure. It's been way too long since I've seen your face. We need to catch up more often, although maybe now's not a good time considering the state of Utah and the pandemic. But we can talk about that another time. Be well, my man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Tom.